Something that's important to anybody that is involved in sales whatsoever is how to move up the ladder in sales, how to move up the company ladder from being at the very bottom all the way to moving your way up to the top, which I have done numerous times. I'm uniquely qualified to talk about this. So I want to go over how I was able to do that at multiple different places because trust me, there's going to come a point in your career, whether you are at the bottom right now or whether you're at the top, where you're going to have to start again probably at a step before or below where you're currently at. Or if you're at the bottom right now, you probably want to learn how to move up. It is incredibly rare that a sales development representative wants to just stay as an SDR. People generally want to at least move up to an AE role. A lot of people have desire to move into a leadership role for a boatload of different reasons. Sometimes you get a little bit more flexibility. You want to learn more things. You're enticed and you're excited by growth in your career. And also, obviously, you can make a lot of money as you move up. Now, you can make a lot of money in the roles that you're in, but what I found is where I've made the most money is in leadership roles or like borderline executive roles where I then have stock in these companies. And in two of them, I made, multiple six figures off of that stock. So I've kind of learned that that's the roadmap where you can make some pretty good money on top of everything else that you're already doing. By the way, if you've never seen my face before, my name's Troy Barter. I've been in sales for nearly 20 years and I've been in tech sales for over 10 years. The purpose of this YouTube channel is to teach you all of the things that I've learned over that past nearly 20 years in sales that I had to learn the hard way, from failing, learning from my failures, and eventually figuring out what that recipe is that'll lead to the highest level of success. So if you're in sales or you're trying to break into sales, trying to make more money, trying to up your game, make sure to subscribe to the channel because I'm continuously posting videos like this one that will help you up your sales game and level up your career. Here's how I did it. And I will also say that this is how I did it. Does that mean that there's the only path is through exactly what I did? No, obviously not. There's more than one way to skin a cat, but this has worked incredibly well for me in my entire career. Anytime that I moved up, I applied these principles and I've learned at the multiple different places where I've had to do this, how to adjust that. And there are things that I've made adjustments on in this process that I do to move up anywhere that I've ever been at. The first thing that I say when it comes to moving up is you want to be high value and low maintenance. And you want to communicate the opportunity that you want. So, what I mean by that in terms of high value, so let's say you're a sales development representative and you want to move over to be an account executive, you want to close deals. The first thing that I ask when people bring that up to me, are you at the top of the board? Are you in the top, two or three people? Because chances are, like we said earlier, all SDRs want to move to that AE role. So if you want to move and you want to get promoted from within, are you beating everybody else that wants to have that promotion? And if the answer is no, then why should you get promoted over anybody else that is above you on the board in terms of the production that they have? So you have to be high value. You want to be at the top of the board. If you're asking for an opportunity and you're at the bottom of the board, what are we talking about? You need to get noticed. And the first way that you get noticed is in your production. Now, as an SDR, another thing that I'll say is it's very easy to get noticed on your production early because, and I've said this in other videos in the past, sure, what's the big number that you're looking at or the target that you have? A lot of times it's like a demo where they prospect showed up to the demo and the AE accepts that demo into their pipeline, whatever stage you guys call that, stage one, stage two, or anything like that. And that's the metric that you're looking for. So to get noticed, whoever has the most of that North Star metric is probably the person that's going to get noticed, but you can get noticed before you have those results because any SDR manager, any manager in general, is looking at activity metrics. They're looking at them a good amount of the time. In other words, how many dials are you making? How many emails are you sending? What are you doing in terms of the actual output to try to get things into your funnel and move things along? You can lead the board in those categories your first day. You can have the highest metrics right off the bat by making, and you can get noticed right off the bat. And that will get in the back of your manager's head where they're like, all right, this is someone that I want to probably keep an eye on because they're leading the board in categories that I care about. And those categories have nothing to do with your skill. They have to do with your will. That's it. Are you willing to put the work in? And a lot of people aren't. Step two is you want to be low maintenance. What I mean by low maintenance isn't that whenever you have an issue, you never communicate it with your boss. No, if you have an issue, you want to bring it over to somebody. But are you complaining or are you providing potential solutions to an issue that you run into? For example, let's say someone took a lead from you, you know, you could say, hey, man, Bill took this lead from me and it should be mine and I want it. Or you could say, hey, I don't know if I'm off base here, I was working this lead and then I noticed that Bill started to work it. In our rules of engagement, who should this go to? And is there something that I could have done differently? Do you see how that sounds way different, one to the other? One is somebody that is high maintenance. They're a whiner, they're complaining. And the other one is someone that's low maintenance. They're not creating problems for their manager. And you could say, well, that's not fair. You shouldn't be always not trying to create problems for your manager. Well, listen, do you want to move up or do you not want to move up? Because I can give you the playtime, the nonsense Sesame Street Disney Channel version of how to move up, or I can give you the actual version. You're in sales. When you're in sales, you need to be able to put yourself in the shoes of the person that you're trying to sell. Now, if you're trying to move up the company ladder, who are you now trying to sell to be able to do that? It's your manager or whoever the hiring manager is for that role. So your manager might not be the DM for this sale, but they're definitely going to be your champion. And if you are constantly complaining, whining, causing problems, putting more on that manager's plate in the role that you're in, do you think that they would want you to move up to the next role where there's going to be more problems for you to deal with? No. So you want to come across as low maintenance as possible, as someone who can handle their own problems, or is at least not going to be emotional when they run into an issue and say, hey, you tell me, did I do something wrong here? Is there something I could have done differently? What does the rules of engagement say here? Do the extra work and come across as someone that is trying, at the very least, to be low maintenance. This goes a long way with managers. I can tell you now, when I'm considering people to move up, and I almost have exclusively in my career promoted people from within, I'm looking at those options. First off, if an SDR says they want to be an AE, I look at where they are on the board. Are they dialing the phone? Because if they're really not dialing now, and I need them as an AE to also find opportunities, you're definitely not going to dial as an AE because you have more responsibilities. You need to do demos, you need to do follow up, you need to work on getting better in the role that you're in. So if you have to worry about all of those other things and your dials are already low as an SDR, now they're going to be non existent when I promote you. If I'm promoting people from within, I want it to be fair. And to me, what I mean by fair is a meritocracy. So you get promoted off of your merit. So if you are leading the board and you want to get promoted, there's a way higher chance that you'd be considered. But if you're not producing and someone else is, then how is it fair for me to promote you over them? You have to do both. So if you have to do both, you want to maximize both, right? I want to have the highest value possible and I want to come across as the most low maintenance, non problem employee that the company has. And generally, if I do both of those things, I'm going to be in good shape. And I could give you some examples of people that are really high value, but they were also high maintenance. I've worked with a boatload of those in my career because A players, a lot of the time, can turn out to be high maintenance. And the problem with that is that the second that they start to become low value or lower value, but their maintenance remains high, that's the time where people start to think, why are we keeping this person around? I've seen this conversation take place at multiple different high level sales companies where someone was really high value and they were really high maintenance. They were a pain in the ass to deal with, but then the value starts to dip. And then people are like, well, wait a minute, we're dealing with them and all of their, prima donna problems when we've got people that are at the same level, but they're way lower maintenance. Why are we dealing with this person? This person's taking too much bandwidth that we could have been spending on something else. That's a problem that you don't want to have. It's a scenario you never want to end up in, particularly if you want to move up. But even if you don't want to move up, that can mean a lot for your career and the opportunities that you get in the role that you're already in. But if you're trying to move up and you're that high maintenance person, no one's going to be interested in making you a larger problem than you already are. But if you come across like you're not a problem at all, in fact, you're the smallest problem or not a non existent problem compared to everybody else there, well, that's the person that we want to move up. That's the person that we want to work with at a deeper level than we currently have them at. Next, you want to communicate your goals in terms of your career path. You want to make sure you communicate those things with your manager. One thing that I will say is you want to do the first two things before you get to the third. You want to have been high value and you want to have shown that you're low maintenance before you begin to really communicate those goals. The reason why I tell you that is I've had a lot of people that come in as a sales development representative day one and say, man, I want to become a manager here someday. I want to be an AE. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And it's like, all right, cool. That sounds cool. But one thing that I have learned is that anyone that usually talks that big game up front, it's rare that they deliver on it. I want you to bring me some quantifiable actual results before we have that conversation. because I've learned over the years that that is meaningless. You communicating that before you've shown me any results, before you've shown that you're a high value employee, before you've shown that you're low maintenance. So, if I've realized that, a lot of managers probably have as well. So, one thing that I've learned is to show that you're high value first, to show that you're low maintenance first, show that you're a team player, then you communicate what your goals are next. Always take on extra responsibilities if you have the bandwidth. So, this is something that I've always done in my career. And a lot of people will say, well, companies will take advantage of you if you do this. And I am a huge fan of people saying that. And I'm a huge fan of people agreeing with that and listening to it because I want an edge. And any time that people talk about how things should be and what you should do, and people start to agree with it, that opens up an opportunity for me to go the extra mile and whip their ass. So I'm very fine with that, where it's like, oh, you shouldn't be taking on extra responsibility. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, I shouldn't take on. Good, good, good. I agree. You should never take on any extra responsibility because guess what? I'm going to. And even though you started here 3 years before me, I'm going to become your boss because I'm going to do all of those things that you said that you're not supposed to do or you shouldn't have to do. And I'll take advantage of the fact that you're willing to do that. The manager might even agree with you. They might even say, you know what, you shouldn't have to do that. But if I'm saying I want to do it anyways and I'm doing that, which one do you think is going to get promoted? You or me? It's me every time. Because there's going to come a time where you're a manager or where you're an AE and you're asked to do something that really isn't within your job title. And you're going to say, well, that's not within my job title. I'm not supposed to do that. That's, again, high maintenance. I want to be low maintenance, but at the same time, I want a free tryout. And when you accept extra responsibility before you get a title, that's a tryout. And you could say, oh, I've been burnt by this in the past. People have. People absolutely have. But I've also won by doing this at the same time. I'd much rather take the swing and potentially strike out than stand in the batter's box and watch the balls go by and strike out anyways. I'm going to try. I'm going to do everything that I can in my power to put myself in the best position to increase the chances that I'm going to be able to move up into the role that I want. And the easiest way of doing that, in my opinion, is always being willing to take on extra responsibility so long as you have the bandwidth for it. You act as if. Fleet Maddox, I was training my peers that were in my training class within a week of me being in the company. And you might say, man, that's presumptuous. I was already beating the other SDRs within a week of being in the company. I was booking more. I was having more sell because it was a very transactional sale. And then I was like, all right, cool. Let me show you guys what I'm doing that's working, what I've picked up on that I think might help because we're all in the same stage of our growth here. How do you think the managers felt about that? I am at a way higher value than anybody else that's there. If they're going to consider someone for a management role, they're already seeing me duplicate myself in others. No one asked me to. That's not my job. But I had the ability to do that, so why wouldn't I? If it's going to make me look better, it's probably a good idea to do it if I have the bandwidth, and I did. So I moved to an AE role fairly quickly doing that, and then I was looking to move into a director role. I had managed in the past. I'd been a national director of sales and door to door, and I wanted to move up. So how did I do that? I was willing to take on additional responsibilities, and I didn't ask for somebody to say, hey, would you mind doing this? I was proactive about it. Like, hey, I noticed that you're doing morning meetings. I've done a boatload of morning meetings, and I was obviously leading the board at the time as well. You want me to cover some stuff? I can give it to you ahead of time. I wouldn't mind helping out with those. I'm very good at running meetings. And then eventually, within like a few weeks, I ended up running pretty much all of the meetings for the SDRs. That was my job, but I was good at it. So I got into that role and I started to level up the SDRs. Also, we were doing nothing in terms of looking at KPIs, looking at, what the conversion rates are from one step to the next, both at the SDR level and at the AE level. So I went to my manager and said, hey man, like I can spin up through Salesforce and through Excel all of these different things where we can get a way better look at trends in terms of like where closing percentage is, where we might be dipping, things that we might want to focus on. I have no problem doing that for you. I'll get all of that over to you. And obviously, my manager's like, hell yeah, like, yeah, get it over to me. And then I made sure that my manager promoted that and the things that I was doing to our regional vice president because my manager knew that eventually my goal was to move into a director role, but I was willing to do a boatload of work to help his life before I ever moved into that role if it ever was to become available on a different team. High value, low maintenance. Then I was proactive about communicating my opportunity and where I wanted to move up. I look at it like it's the game of risk. Right now, I might be just the United States, but I'm already eyeing Canada. I'm already eyeing Mexico. I'm already looking to move into South America. I want as much territory as I can handle. So you have to have the bandwidth for it, but I want as much territory as I can possibly get. And then the goal is to level up the territory that you already have. You can't ignore what you've got. And to also level up the territory that I've now been given, because then what's the natural inclination of leadership from there? We crushed it at this thing. We gave them something else, crushed that. Why don't we give them more? And with more comes a higher title that's going to help you in your career. Anyone who tells you that titles don't matter probably has a title that you already want, so they don't want you to believe that it matters, but it absolutely does. The title that you have in sales determines the level of stock that you're going to get or equity within the company. It determines comp bands. So they'll say, oh, well, your compensation band is for this level, and we can't give you any more than the level that you're at because then you'd be making more than the person that's in the comp band level above you. So titles matter in terms of how you're able to be compensated. And also, titles matter if things don't work out at that company. If you decide that you want to move over to somewhere else, Fleetmatic's perfect example. I'd never been a director of sales in tech sales, but then I did it at Fleetmatics. I went from SDR to AE to director of sales. And then when I went to Panadoc, I didn't have to start as an SDR anymore. I had already been a director of sales at a company that was acquired by Verizon for $2.4 billion. Now I get to go from director to director. And then I got to move from director of sales development to director of sales, good equity. That company becomes $1 billion company. Man, things are going well. Next, have big picture patience and urgency. So, what do I mean by that? When I was at Fleetmatics, for example, I started as an SDR and moved into an AE role. There was no available director of sales role. And Fleetmatics was a kind of unique company. Everyone was making phenomenal money. Over a quarter of the office, and this is a decade ago, was making 100 grand or more. So people didn't really leave, and they never lost an A player. And if you were a director that was making money, you had equity too. There was no way that you were leaving. So I had no reason to believe that there was ever going to be an open director role anytime soon. Yet I still made sure that I was high value, low maintenance. I communicated the roadmap and the career progression that I wanted to have with my manager. I took on additional responsibility, and I continued to do that until the second director there, not my boss, but the other boss that had another team there, got asked to move to Australia to open up the Australia market. And all of a sudden, there's a director role available. I had big picture patience. I knew that eventually a role would come up. And if I put the work in that no one else was willing to do, because why would you put that work in when there's no role available? I knew eventually there would be one. And if not, I would still become more entrenched in the role that I was in by providing more value. So it was a win win either way. But once he left and moved to Australia, there is literally no other option but me. I'm a top performer as an account executive. I help work with the SDRs already, and the next role is being a great account. You have to be able to manage account executives and SDRs as a director of sales. I've already proven that I could do both. I was a top performer as an account executive. So when you have me manage other top performing account executives, they respect me. And I knew that I had to outperform some of these monsters if they ever would want to work with me as their manager. That just shows the patience, right? And that big picture urgency. So on the urgency side, it's not urgency to get promoted. You have big picture patience. In other words, I'm going to do all of the things that are going to make me. It's not even in the judges' scorecards anymore. It's a guarantee that I'm going to move up because I'm doing so much responsibilities that are at the next level. I've already proven that I can handle them, and everybody messes with me. And that's important, by the way. Your peers are who promote you, not your boss, not, not the hiring manager. At the end of the day, usually in sales organizations, if you want to move up from within, a huge determining factor of that is if you were to ask everybody in the organization who should move up next, would they say your name or not? And if they wouldn't, chances are you're not going to be able to move up or you're never going to. And I actually said that to our RVP at Fleetmatics. I remember it like it was yesterday. We're at the Brown Boxer in Clearwater at the bar. And he said, why should you get promoted over anybody else? And I told him, I said, man, the way that I've always looked at it is you're not the person that promotes me. Travis, who is my manager, he's not the person that promotes me. The office is who promotes me. And if you wanted to go around and ask everybody else on this sales floor who should move up, I guarantee you that all of them would say that it's me because they know that I put in the work and they know that I'm a leader and they would want to work for me based on all of the work that I've put in the past year. It took a year, for a little bit under a year for me to get promoted all the way up to director at Fleetmatics. Because again, I was doing all of that extra stuff ahead of time. The urgency side isn't to be promoted. It's more you have urgency to show that value quickly. So when the time comes, you get it. Again, I had big picture patience for the role. So I wasn't going to do the work because I couldn't see the finish line. I just had faith that the finish line would eventually materialize. But I also had the urgency to start proving my value for the role way before a role ever even materialized. Both of those things are important if you want to move up in a company. Big picture patience and big picture urgency. I'll give you one more thing that I learned a while back, but I think is incredibly important. Perceived value actually trumps results. You really want to have both, but perceived value in terms of your career and how you're viewed in the company, how you're viewed by your peers, your leaders, maybe even people that you would say are underneath you or report to you in your organization, how they perceive your value trumps the actual results that you're bringing in. And I never used to look at things that way. I always looked at it at first like at the end of the day, if I'm beating everybody in terms of the actual results and value that I bring to the role that I'm in, that I'm good and I'm going to progress my career. That's not the metric that you want to look at in terms of your progress day to day. What you really want to look at is at the end of the day, is my perceived value with my boss, with my peers, with anyone that reports to me, with anyone in other orgs in the company, is my perceived value at the end of the day today higher than it was at the start of the day? And if the answer is yes, over time, and you have to do it every single day. If the answer is yes, over time, if you can combine that with the high value and the results and the low maintenance, it makes it really impossible for you to not get promoted because you've probably seen this before. You've seen someone that's really good at networking and making friends and warming up to the boss and to other people in the company. And then when it comes time to promote, sometimes they actually trick them and they end up getting promoted, even though they're not producing any results. I've seen it before. I've seen it. I'll probably see it again. I've seen it a bunch of times, but that is a factor. So I used to look at those people like, man, screw them. That's not the way that I do things. The way that I do things is I bring in results and they'll promote me off of my merit and off of my results. I'm not that type of guy. I'm not going to do that. More that I thought about it is like, but wait a minute, that does factor into a decision. You know, what do they always say? People buy from people that they like. I actually don't believe that, but I do believe that people buy from people that they trust. And I believe that people want to work with people that they like. So if you're looking to move up within a company, your boss, if your boss promotes you from SDR to AE, your boss is probably going to spend more time with you the higher up that you move up within their organization because now you're handling higher value parts of the sales process, higher conversion rates, bigger deals. So, do they want to work with you or do they not want to work with you? And I don't care. I've worked with plenty of people that I really like, but I like the results that they brought in. But a lot of managers will look at you, and if you're abrasive, and if you're not somebody that's really kind of warmed up to them and tried to build a relationship with them, but someone else did, they might not have your results and they might actually get your next job before you can get it. So I looked at it like, well, why wouldn't I want to do both if both increase the chance of me moving up? This took a long time for me to learn, a long time. And it doesn't mean being fake. I network with people now when I never used to. You come to realize, like, wait a minute, this is like multi threading on an enterprise level deal. Why wouldn't I want to build a relationship with everybody else that's here? Why wouldn't I want to get those people to like me? And it's just having genuine interest in people and getting to know them. You don't have to be fake at the same time. It's more fun to go through life getting along with people and getting to know people and taking a chance and assuming the positives in people. And if you do that when you're networking, it does two things for you. Number one, it's just a better way to go through life. But number two, more people will like you. More people will rock with you. The more people that rock with you, like you, are connected to you in some way and have an investment in you because of the relationship that you've built, the higher chance that you're going to be able to move up. The perceived value of you, both the results, whether you're low maintenance, whether you're helping people out, whether you're building relationships with people, whether or not they like you, these things matter. And again, you can look at LinkedIn, you can look all over the place, and they will tell you that none of those things should matter. And you know what? There's a chance that they're right. But the reality is, it still does matter. So you can buy what they're selling on LinkedIn, or you can take advantage of it. And what I mean by that is you'll realize that everybody else does buy into that. Oh, yeah, it shouldn't be that way. And you can just nod your head and say, yep, that's right. Shouldn't be that way. And then you do it anyways. And it will separate you from everybody else that you're working with and put you in the best position to be able to move up. I hope that this was helpful. I can tell you, I don't know anyone that has moved up in really high level organizations more times than me or faster than me. These things work. They're not the only way of being able to do it, but this is my roadmap. I gave you it all.